This is a simple little game where you move the blue ball to eat the red ball, and when you move it around, every time you eat the red ball, it will allow the blue ball to grow bigger. It's kind of hard because it randomly appears. There you go. So you can see it's getting bigger each time. And you're moving the blue ball using your up, down, left, right arrow keys. So if you've already done the Pong video, this one will be super easy to do. But I'm going to go pretty fast, so if you haven't already seen my Pong video, watch that one first because I go through all of the components step by step in that video. And in this one, I'm just using all of the same components, but I already pre-wrote the code and I'm just going to go through it really fast. So let me go through it step by step. Okay, I went ahead and created the background scene. This time I decided to go with the color white. I'm using the left, right, up, and down arrow keys to move my blue ellipse. So notice I have at the top I've created two float values, the blue x and the blue y. And these float values are for the x and y coordinates of the blue ellipse. I've also created a float for the red x and the red y. That's because the red ellipse is also going to be moving around randomly later. So that part right there is just for the blue ball's movement. Then down here I have the red ball moving, and notice when it's moving, both the x and the y values are going to change, and they're going to change by the amount of x direction and y direction. So x direction and y direction are also floats that start off with 0. What that means is that in the beginning none of the components are moving, but the first time that you swallow the red ball, then it's going to start randomly moving to a different x and y location. We'll get to that in just a second. So here you go. This is what makes the red ball move. And then this part down here is just the constraints of the boundaries for the red. So notice if the x value is less than 10 or greater than 690, or if the y value is less than 10 or greater than 690, then I reposition it into a random place on the screen, and I also give it a random x and y direction value, which is how quickly it's going to move in the x or y direction. Down here is the actual drawing of the red ellipse and the blue ellipse. So the x and y value of blue obviously are variables because it's moving around when you move it with the arrow keys, but the width and the height also had to be variables. And the reason for that is because I start off with a width and height of 40 pixels, but I wanted the blue to increase by an increment of 10 every time that it swallows the red. So for that reason, these also have to be variables. And then finally, this middle section right here, where I had to show that the blue is swallowing the red, and this has to reset everything. So this part of the code was actually the most complicated because I had to figure out when the blue ellipse overlaps with the red ellipse, and I didn't want it to have to be like a perfect match of the x and y values. So what I did was if the blue x overlaps with the red x plus a little bit of wiggle room, which is half of its width, and then also if the y value matches with the red y value plus around half of its height, because as the blue gets bigger, obviously it'll overlap more. So when the blue does overlap with the red, I reset the red to a random x and y value, and also it'll start going a random direction. And I have to increase the size of the blue by the increment, which I just chose as 10. You can make it whatever you want. So if you make it a smaller value, the blue ball will increase slower. And if you make it a bigger value, it would increase a lot faster. So let's go ahead and try that out. If I made it a 20, then now when I swallow the red, you can see it's a much more dramatic increase.